The founder's homestead is for Megan. My father, Robert, announced, his voice booming across the grand wine cellar. This wasn't a quiet family gathering. It was a full-blown PR event to launch our new collection, complete with journalists and local influencers. Everyone cheered. The flash of cameras bounced off the silver wine buckets. My little sister, Megan, was practically glowing. She'd just finished her marketing degree. And now, Dad was handing her the title of creative director and the keys to the $30 million estate our grandfather built. I stayed in the back, half hidden by an oak barrel. As everyone raised their glass to toast Megan and her new life, I quietly opened the legal app on my phone. I saw the final confirmation. 10:59 a.m. Right on schedule. And I smiled. This party wasn't for our new wine. It was for Megan. It was always for Megan. My sister and I were two sides of the same coin, minted in different decades. She got the shiny, parent-funded marketing degree from a private university. She was the face of the brand. I was the hands. I got a degree in sustainable agriculture from a state school. I paid for it myself by working nights and weekends at a rival vineyard, learning soil chemistry and grape rot. The things my father, Robert, found distasteful. My graduation, 8 years ago, was a quiet dinner at the Cheesecake Factory. My parents gave me a card with a $1,000 check inside. My mother, Jennifer, said, "We're so proud you're finally done with all that dirt." A $1,000 check. Megan was just handed a $30 million legacy and the title of creative director. "I'm thinking we knock out this entire wall," Megan said, gesturing wildly to the journalists. "The rustic look is so dated. I want clean lines. White marble. Maybe a water feature?" My mother, Jennifer, nodded eagerly. "Whatever you need, sweetheart. The homestead should reflect your vision." My vision was of the clock on the cellar wall. 10:45 a.m. 15 minutes. My phone vibrated in my pocket. Not a text. It was a calendar alert from my legal team. The subject line was simple. Activation? I had spent my entire life being the responsible one. The quiet one. The one who actually understood the land our entire fortune was built on. While Megan was learning to market wine, I was learning how to make it. And for years, I had been planning for this exact day, this exact minute. My grandfather, the man who actually built this place, had seen this coming. He saw my father's obsession with image. He saw my mother's enabling. And he saw me. 10:46 a.m. 14 minutes. I felt another vibration. A text from the estate attorney. All documents are executed. Awaiting the final transfer. Your grandfather would be very proud. I took a sip of the new Cabernet. It was thin. Dad had clearly rushed the harvest to meet the launch date. I watched Megan laugh, soaking in the applause. Let her have this moment. Let her plan her white marble renovations. In 14 minutes, she'd need my permission to change a light bulb. The last 15 minutes dragged on. I thought about my real job, the one my family knew nothing about. For the past 3 years, I wasn't just helping out at some small local winery. I was the head of soil science for our biggest competitor, the one that was systematically beating us in every awards category. I was the one developing the techniques that were making their wine better, while my own family's legacy was being bottled and sold thin. My brother, Ryan, nudged me. "You gonna eat that, or just stare at it?" I pushed the tiny appetizer plate toward him. "You can have it." Then, the clock on the cellar wall struck 11 a.m. As if on cue, my father's phone rang. A loud, obnoxious ringtone he'd set for his most important contacts. He glanced at the screen, and his smile tightened. It was the family's law firm, the one that managed the estate. "Excuse me." "Everyone," he said, forcing a laugh. The price of success. Always on call. He stepped outside onto the stone patio. Through the thick glass doors, we could all see him. At first, he looked annoyed, waving his hand as if dismissing something. Then he went still. He stared at his phone. His expression shifted from annoyed to confused. And then, his face went pale. The kind of white, blood-drained pale that means the bottom has just dropped out. The party's laughter died down. Everyone was watching him. He ended the call, fumbled with his phone for a moment, and then walked back inside. He walked right past Megan, who was posing for a photo. He ignored my mother. He walked straight to me, his eyes wide. "I need to speak with you. Now." He grabbed my elbow not gently and pulled me into a small alcove by the tasting bar, away from the journalists. "What is this?" he hissed, shoving his phone in my face. It was an email from the board, from the attorneys. I read the subject line out loud. "Notice of corporate charter activation." "Read the rest of it," Ed demanded, his hand shaking. "The dormant succession clause, triggered upon the 30th birthday of the designated heir, has been activated." I read. He snatched the phone back. "It says you, Clara. It says you are now the controlling shareholder and the new president of the entire estate. This is some kind of sick joke, isn't it? It's a mistake." I looked at him calmly. "It's not a mistake, Dad. It's right." His face crumpled in disbelief. How could you possibly know about this? Your grandfather died when you were 16. He never would have." "He told me," I said, cutting him off. "Right before he passed. He was very clear about what would happen today. He told me everything." We walked back to the center of the cellar. The music had stopped. The journalists were whispering, sensing a story far better than the one they'd been invited for. My mother, Jennifer, rushed over. "Robert, what is it? You look ill." Megan stamped her foot, her face red and blotchy from the champagne. "What is going on, Dad? You're ruining my party. What did she say to you?" Everyone looked at me. The quiet one. The shadow. I had never held the center of this family's attention for more than a few seconds. I cleared my throat. "There's been a misunderstanding," I said, my voice clear and steady. The whole room leaned in. "Dad, you've made a promise to Megan that wasn't yours to make." "Clara, don't you dare." My mother started, but I held up a hand. "This estate," I said, looking around at the massive oak barrels and stone walls, "is not owned by my father. It hasn't been for 15 years. It is a corporate asset managed by a charter established by my grandfather." The room was dead silent. Grandfather's charter was very specific. He created a dormant succession clause. The estate was to be managed by a board until the eldest, most competent heir turned 30. At that point, full controlling interest, and the title of president would transfer to them. I looked at my watch. As of 11 a.m. today, that's me. Megan left. A high-pitched, nervous sound. That is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. "Dad, tell her she's lying." My father just stared at his feet, his face ashen. "He can't," I said, "because he just received the notification. You all seem to think this is just a fancy house and some fields. You're wrong. This is a $30 million corporation. A corporation that, despite my father's best efforts to run it like a personal piggy bank, has been generating over $80,000 a month in net income. Income that has been sitting in a corporate account, managed by the board, just waiting." My mother looked like she was going to faint. 80,000 at a month, Robert. What is she talking about? She's talking about the money. I said simply, "The money you've been spending, and the money I've been tracking." Grandfather set up the charter to prevent exactly this, to protect his legacy from impulsive management. I looked right at my father when I said it. He wanted someone who understood the land, not just the label. Megan's face went from disbelief to pure, unfiltered rage. "Then change it," she screamed, her voice echoing in the suddenly quiet cellar. "The journalists were recording everything now. You just said you're in control." "Clara, so be in control. Just give me the homestead Dad promised." "I can't do that, Megan. That's just lawyer talk for, I'm keeping it all for myself," she spat. "Actually," a new voice cut in. It was my Aunt Susan, my father's sister. She was a quiet member of the board. Someone my father had always dismissed as sentimental. She stepped forward. She's right. Megan. She can't. Your grandfather, my father, was terrified of this. He was terrified that Robert would treat this legacy like a credit card, and that the rest of us would let him. My father shot her a look. Susan. This is not the time. It's precisely the time, Susan said. She looked at me with sad, tired eyes. Your grandfather's intentions are perfectly clear, and he knew who he could trust. My father was about to argue, but I held up my hand. She's right, I said. He didn't just leave instructions in the charter. He left this. I reached into my bag and pulled out a worn, leather-bound book, the Founder's Ledger. My father's face went white. He knew exactly what it was. It was the book our grandfather wrote, everything in his planting schedules, his formulas, his philosophy. I opened it to the last page, a page I had read 1,000 times. The ink was faded, but the handwriting was strong. I am reading this, I said to the room, not to shame anyone, but to honor the man who built this. I read his words. This legacy is more than dirt and grapes. It is a testament to patience. It must be protected from fast hands and slow minds. I paused, letting the words hang. He left a final note. For my father. I looked directly at Robert. Robert. My son. I love you, but you value image over substance. You would sell the roots to paint the leaves. You will bankrupt this family's spirit long before you bankrupt its wallet. For this reason, I am placing the future of this land in the hands of the only one who shares my heart for it. I trust Clara. She will keep it safe. The silence was absolute. The truth was finally out. Megan looked at my father, who wouldn't meet her eyes. Then she looked at me. It was a look of pure hatred. You planned this, she shrieked. You were always jealous. You couldn't stand seeing me get something. So, you ruined it. She grabbed her glass of our thinnest wine. Keep your stupid, dirty vineyard. She hurled the glass against the stone wall, where it shattered, spattering red wine across a row of new barrels. Then she grabbed her purse and stormed out of the cellar, shoving a journalist on her way. My mother, Jennifer, after a moment of stunned silence, ran out after her. Megan. Sweetheart. Wait. The party was officially over. My mother, Jennifer. It didn't stay with her long. She came back into the cellar a minute later, her face tight, with a fury I had never seen directed at anyone but a slow waiter. She walked right up to me, and her voice was a low whisper, more venomous than any scream. How could you? How could you humiliate your sister like that? In front of all these people, on her day? I looked at her, really looked at her. Maybe for the first time, I didn't humiliate her. Mom, her expectations did. Your expectations did? You and Dad spent her entire life convincing her she deserved a $30 million estate for a marketing degree. And you're angry at me for telling the truth? She was speechless. She just kept opening and closing her mouth. And in that silence, I understood something. I understood why they did it. Have you ever wondered why? In so many families, there's one child who seems to get all the resources, all the attention, all the bailouts, while the other one, the quiet one, the responsible one, is completely ignored. It's a psychological quirk. It's called the squeaky wheel syndrome. The theory is simple. The wheel that makes the most noise gets the grease. My sister, Megan, was the squeaky wheel. She was loud. She was demanding. She was constantly in some kind of minor crisis that needed my parents' immediate attention and money. Her life was a series of small fires, and my parents were always rushing in with buckets of water. I was the quiet wheel. I was self-sufficient. I got my own degree, paid my own bills, and never asked for anything. So in their minds, I didn't need anything. They weren't bad people. Not really. They were just inefficient managers. They mistook Megan's noise for need, and my silence for strength. They weren't giving her more love. they were just giving her more management, trying to grease the wheel that wouldn't stop squeaking, just so they could have some peace. The problem is, after decades of this, the squeaky wheel starts to believe it deserves all the grease. And the quiet wheel learns to move on its own. My father, Robert, finally found his voice. He was trying a different tactic, righteous indignation. You should have told us. Gleda, you should have warned us before all this. He gestured to the shattered glass, the horrified journalists, the ruin of his party. He was trying to make this my fault. I did. I said. He blinked. What? I did warn you. I sent you and Mom an email 3 months ago. The day the estate administrator contacted me about the upcoming activation, I outlined the entire timeline. I attached the relevant sections of the charter. I specifically suggested you review grandfather's will before making any promises about corporate assets. I watched the color drain from his face for the second time that day. He was remembering that email. He stammered. I saw that. I thought it was spam. Some kind of phishing scam. It looked complicated. I didn't read it carefully. I just stared at him. You thought an email from our family's estate attorney, with the subject line, regarding the founder's charter, was a phishing scam. I get a lot of emails, he said, his voice cracking. And that, I said, turning to the few remaining guests, is why grandfather did this. Because my father doesn't read the details. He just throws the party. My dad had nothing to say. He had just publicly admitted his own incompetence. He had failed to read the email that would have saved him. And Megan. All of this humiliation, it wasn't my fault. It was his. And he knew it. The journalists left first, scrambling to get the story out. The other guests just quietly melted away, not wanting to be part of the family explosion. Soon, it was just me, my brother Ryan, and Aunt Susan, standing in the cellar among the empty glasses and the stain of red wine on the wall. Ryan, ever the pragmatist, cleared his throat. So, just to be clear, does this mean I can't use the Homestead for my fantasy football draft next month for free? I mean, I almost laughed. It was the most predictable thing he could have said. No one gets it for free. Ryan, I said, picking up the ledger. Not anymore. The founder's homestead is a corporate asset. It has operating costs. Family members can book it. But you'll pay the family rate, which covers the cleaning, utilities, and insurance. Just like any other shareholder. But we've never had to pay before. He whined. The rules were always in the charter, Aunt Susan said, her voice firm. Your father just chose to ignore them. Clara is simply enforcing them. That's changing. I said, everything is changing. That evening, I was in my small apartment, the one I paid for with my own salary. When my father called, I let it ring 3 times before answering. His voice was small, defeated. My lawyer says, you're right, he said. No, hello. He said, the charter is ironclad. There's nothing I can do. I waited. Your mother, he continued. She says, you've destroyed this family. She says, you did this to shame us. I didn't do this. Dad, I said, my voice tired. You did. You and Mom did. You promised something that wasn't yours to give? I'm just protecting what grandfather built. I'm here to honor his legacy. Not to manage your feelings or win your approval. He was silent for a long time. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line. That ledger? He finally asked, his voice cracking. What else did it say? What else did he say? About me. I closed my eyes, picturing the last lines. He said this would be hard. He said family would resist. He said you would all try to make me feel guilty. And he said, I took a deep breath, that I must stand firm, that I was the keeper of the roots. He was right. Dad. I heard a small sound, like a sob cut short. And then he hung up, I walked to my window and looked out. I couldn't see the vineyard from here, but I could feel it. I felt the weight of $30 million, of a 30-year plan, clicking into place. And I thought about all the other people out there, the ones who feel like I did. If you are one of them, if you, like me, have spent your life being the quiet one, the competent one who gets overlooked, the one who has to work twice as hard for half the recognition, while someone else gets applauded just for showing up. If you are the one who has to be your own parent, your own safety net, the one who is always expected to be fine while others are allowed to fall apart, I want you to understand this. Your silence was not weakness. It was observation. Your self-sufficiency was not a flaw. It was your training. You weren't being left behind. You were being forged. And when your moment comes, when the charter is finally activated, your competence will speak louder than any empty promise ever could. Don't seek their approval. They will never give it. Seek your legacy and protect it. Story 2, I am Chloe. I'm 30 years old, and I am finally free from my family's suffocating control. At least, I thought I was, until this morning, when the pounding on my door jolted me awake at 6 a.m. I heard my father's cold, commanding voice echo down the hall of my seaport loft. She's mentally unstable, he yelled to my brother, Ryan, and the 2 security men with him. Get the bolt cutters and open this door. We have to secure the company's financial records. They had no idea I was standing just inside, listening to every word, my hand shaking as I held my phone. Recording. They had no idea I was waiting for them. And they definitely had no idea what I was holding in my other hand. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. If this story resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories of standing up to toxic family dynamics. To understand why my father was trying to break into my loft with bolt cutters, you need to understand the people who raised me. You need to understand the gilded cage they built for me. I grew up in the opulent, old money world of Beacon Hill, Boston. We lived in an immaculate, historic colonial home, the kind tourists take pictures of. Behind the antique brick and ivy-covered walls lived a family obsessed with image, power, and above all, control. My father, Mark, is a patriarch in the truest sense of the word. He built a major real estate development firm from the ground up, and he believed that achievement gave him absolute authority. His loyalty was a suffocating blanket. If you were under his roof, you were under his rule. Questioning his decisions wasn't just disagreement. It was a deep, personal betrayal. My mother, Laura, was his perfect partner. She perfected the art of manipulation. She never yelled, she didn't have to. She wielded guilt and passive aggression with surgical precision. Her entire life was dedicated to the family's public image, which she managed by chairing the family's charity foundation. We just want what's best for you, darling, she would say, right after skillfully tearing down my confidence. Her approval was a currency she used to buy my compliance. And then there's my brother, Ryan, 3 years older, the golden child, and the heir apparent to the family throne. He was a vice president at my father's firm, and he mirrored our father in every way, right down to the condescending smirk. While Dad controlled with commands, Ryan controlled with mockery. Don't be so sensitive, Chloe, was his favorite response. Anytime I dared to express an opinion, in my family, everyone had a role. Mark was the king, Laura the queen, and Ryan the prince. I was the help. My passion, the only thing that ever felt truly mine, was cooking, culinary arts. I spent hours in the kitchen, experimenting, reading, finding a peace I couldn't find anywhere else. But in my family, a passion that couldn't be listed on a financial statement was worthless. That's a cute hobby, Chloe, my father declared when I was in high school, but it won't pay the bills. My mother was worse. A woman's place might start in the kitchen, but it ends in the boardroom, or at the head of a charity gala. She'd say, "Don't be so domestic. So, I was steered away from culinary school and pushed into accounting. You'll be useful, my father said. You'll keep the books for the firm. It was a command, not a suggestion. I dutifully got my degree and took my place in a windowless office in my father's building. Running the numbers on his multi-million-dollar projects, I was the girl who kept the books. I spent my 20s drowning in spreadsheets. My dreams of a chef's coat gathering dust. My life was a series of paper-cut humiliations. My mother would suggest outfits, which were really just uniforms for my role as the dutiful daughter. My father would have me run spreadsheets for his meetings, then dismiss me. Just run the numbers. Chloe, let Ryan and I handle the vision. Even my hobby was a target. I'd cook a complex meal for a family dinner, and Ryan would poke at it. Playing with your little sauces again, how quaint. By 30, I was a ghost. I was living at home, working for my father, and managing the finances of a family that didn't even see me. I had a savings account I was too afraid to touch, and a passion I was too ashamed to admit I still had. From the outside, I was a success. On the inside, I was suffocating. The turning point came during a therapy session I'd been secretly attending for 6 months. My therapist, Dr. Ramirez, was helping me untangle the 30 years of guilt and obligation my family had so expertly woven around me. I was explaining, for the 10th time, why I couldn't just leave. Why my father needed me to manage the books. Why my mother would fall apart without me. Dr. Ramirez listened patiently, then asked a simple, devastating question. Chloe, whose balance sheet are you living on? Yours or theirs? I had no answer, because I finally realized I wasn't just managing their books, I was one of their books, an asset to be managed, a line item in their portfolio of success. The question haunted me for weeks. It was a splinter in my mind, and I couldn't get it out. That's when I made my decision. At 30 years old, I was going to have my own place for the first time, regardless of the consequences. I found my apartment online. It was everything my family home was not. It was a small, modern, one-bedroom loft in the Seaport district, with floor-to-ceiling glass walls that looked out over the water. It was clean, bright, and had a kitchen that, while small, was sleek and full of potential. It was the visual opposite of the dark, heavy, historic colonial in Beacon Hill, a place filled with antique furniture and the ghosts of expectations. Most importantly, it was mine. I signed the lease without telling them. I chose to break the news at our mandatory Sunday dinner. I waited until my father had finished his speech about a new acquisition. I've signed a lease on an apartment, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I'll be moving out at the end of the month. The silence was deafening. My father, Mark, placed his fork down with deliberate slowness. An apartment in the Seaport. Do you have any idea what those cost per square foot? That is financially reckless? Chloe, my mother, Laura, immediately put her hand to her chest, her eyes filling with tears. But why would you leave us? Darling, don't we take good care of you? Is that old house really so terrible? Ryan just scoffed, shaking his head. Here we go again. Is this another one of your little independence phases? Chloe, remember when you wanted to go to culinary school in France? I had prepared for this. I'd rehearsed it with Dr. Ramirez. I've already signed the lease. I'm moving in 2 weeks. I would love your support. But I'm doing this either way. The shock gave way to what I call the containment phase. If they couldn't stop my independence, they would try to control it. My father insisted on reviewing the lease for any hidden liabilities. My mother insisted on helping me buy furniture, steering me toward heavy, dark wood pieces that looked exactly like the ones in their home. But I moved in, and that first night, alone in my glass-walled loft, I sat on the floor, ate cheap takeout my mother would have called peasant food, and cried, not from sadness, but from a profound, terrifying relief. I slept better that night than I had in my entire life. That peace lasted exactly 1 week. They insisted on having a key fob. For emergencies. Chloe. My father had said. His tone, making it clear it wasn't a request. What if something happens? We need to be able to get to you. The emergency came a week later. I got home late from the office, exhausted from closing the quarterly reports, only to find my key fob wouldn't work. When I finally got in through the building's front desk, I found my mother in my apartment, my home office. My one space of professional control was turned upside down. My files were in new boxes. My desk was rearranged. Surprise. Darling, she said, wiping her hands on an apron I'd never seen before. I knew you were stressed, so I came to help you get organized. Your system was just so messy. I looked at the neatly labeled, but completely reorganized, file boxes. Mom, I had a system. I knew where everything was. These are the company's financial records. Don't be dramatic, she said, waving her hand. I just couldn't find the quarterly reports for your father, so I tidied up. It's much better now. She had entered my private, professional space, violated it, and was now framing it as a favor. The rage I felt was so cold, so sharp. It almost took my breath away. You can't just come in here. Mom, I said, my voice shaking. You can't just go through my work. You need to call first. Her face crumpled instantly. I was just trying to help. After all we do for you. You're going to accuse me of... What? Tidying up. I don't understand why you're being so cruel. After she left in a cloud of performative tears, I sat on my floor for an hour, feeling violated. It was my neighbor, Maya, who found me. I'd met her in the elevator. She was a corporate lawyer. She knocked, holding a mail package of mine that had been delivered to her by mistake. She saw my face, saw the boxes, and just raised an eyebrow. Family, she asked. I nodded, and the story just spilled out. The control, the help, the key fob. She listened. Hace expresión, unreadable. When I finished, she just said, Chloe, what you're describing isn't help. It's a hostile takeover. Having a key doesn't give them jurisdiction. They have absolutely no boundaries. Hearing a professional, a lawyer, validate my feelings was like a dam breaking. That night, I called a locksmith and had the high-tech locks on my door changed. I had the electronic access for their fobs permanently disabled. I didn't tell them. I knew the confrontation would come. But I finally understood that setting a boundary wasn't an act of aggression. It was an act of self-preservation. The war was quiet for a few weeks, but I knew it wasn't over. My family doesn't forget a slight, and changing my locks was, in their eyes, a declaration of war. The next battle was set on their territory, the annual Foundation Charity Gala. It was my mother's crowning achievement of the year, a massive event held in the ballroom of a historic Boston hotel. It was the peak of their performance, a night where all of Boston's elite gathered to watch my parents be generous. Attendance was mandatory. My refusal to go would have been a public scandal. So I went. I wore a simple black dress, determined to be a ghost, to just sit at the back table, clap when I was supposed to, and leave. The first hour was a blur of fake smiles and air kisses. I avoided my Aunt Sharon, who I could feel staring at me, no doubt having heard about the lock incident from my mother. Then, my father, Mark, took the stage for the main speech. He was charming, powerful, thanking everyone for their support. I was just watching the clock, counting the minutes. This year, he announced, his voice booming across the room, we are launching a new literacy initiative. And to kickstart it, my family is leading the way. He paused, scanning the crowd, his eyes landing directly on me. My son, Ryan, has already pledged a generous amount. And tonight, I'm thrilled to announce that my daughter, Chloe, has pledged a remarkable $20,000 to the fund. The ballroom erupted in applause. Hundreds of people turned to look at me. Smiling. Clapping. My body went ice cold. I hadn't pledged $1. This was an ambush. I was trapped. He knew it. In front of all these people, I had two choices: agree to a $20,000 pledge I couldn't afford, or publicly humiliate him. This was his power play. He was forcing me back into line. Using public opinion as his weapon, my mother was beaming from the front table, as if she was in on it. My brother Ryan was smirking at me. I felt the old, familiar panic rise in my throat. The urge to just nod, to smile, to comply, to end the horrible, crushing weight of everyone's attention. But then I thought of my loft. I thought of Dr. Ramirez. Whose balance sheet are you on? I stood up. The room quieted down. Sensing a moment. I'm sorry, I said, my voice shaking, but carrying in the silence. There seems to be a misunderstanding. This is the first I'm hearing of this pledge. You could have heard a pin drop. My father's smile didn't waver, but his eyes turned to steel. My mother's face went white with fury. She quickly came to my side, grabbing my arm, her nails digging in. You are embarrassing us, Chloe, she hissed, her smile still plastered on. Sight down. Now. No, I said, pulling my arm away. I'm not paying for a donation I never agreed to. I turned, and I walked out of that ballroom, the silence of 500 people following me all the way to the door. The fallout was immediate. By the time I got home, my phone was already blowing up. Not from my parents, but from their flying monkeys. My Aunt Sharon was the first to call. Chloe, darling, your mother just called me. She is devastated, she said, her voice dripping with fake concern. She said, you had some kind of erratic episode at the gala, that you're not well. Your father is just worried sick. Another call, an hour later, from a family friend. Your parents are just concerned about your mental stability. Chloe, they're saying you've been acting strangely ever since you moved out. I was confused, until my therapist, Dr. Ramirez, gave me a name for this tactic. I was describing the calls to her, how they were twisting the story, how I was, suddenly the unstable one, not my father for his public ambush. What you're experiencing, Chloe, she said, is a classic narcissistic abuse tactic. It's called DARVO. It stands for deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender. My father denied his abusive action, the public financial ambush. He attacked my character for refusing to play along, and he reversed the roles of victim and offender. Suddenly, he was the concerned father, the victim of my public disrespect, and I was the unstable and erratic offender. It was the narcissist's playbook, chapter and verse. They were building a narrative. They weren't just angry, they were laying the groundwork to prove I was incompetent, that I couldn't be trusted, that I needed to be managed. And I was terrified to find out what their next move would be. The DARVO campaign was just the beginning. I felt like I was in a fog for days, waiting for the next attack. The smear campaign was one thing, but my father's insistence on my instability felt strategic, not just emotional. I was still, technically, the accountant for the firm, and with the quarterly reports due, I locked myself in my home office, trying to make sense of the numbers. My mother's reorganizing had been a nightmare, but I finally had most of my spreadsheets back in order, and that's when I saw it. It started as a small anomaly, a transfer for $40,000 to an LLC I didn't recognize, then another for $75,000. I started digging, pulling wire transfer records from the bank, my blood running cold. I traced the LLC to an offshore holding company, and then I found more and more. Over the last 6 months, massive, unexplainable transfers, millions of dollars. It wasn't just messy bookkeeping. This was embezzlement. My hands were shaking. I started cross-referencing dates. The transfers always happened on a Friday. The same Fridays Ryan had conveniently forgotten to send me his expense reports. The same weeks he'd been unusually agitated, blaming me for losing paperwork. It all clicked into place with a horrifying snap. My mother reorganizing my office. My father's sudden obsession with securing the company's financial records. Ryan's panic. His constant, desperate enabling of their campaign against me. He wasn't just the golden child. He was a gambler. I'd heard whispers for years. Dismissed them as rumors. But the numbers didn't lie. My brother, Ryan, was stealing millions from our family's company. And they were trying to frame me. Their break-in attempt wasn't just about control, it was about evidence. They needed to get into my loft. They needed my company laptop, my hard drives, my files, all of which contained the proof of Ryan's crimes, the mentally unstable narrative, the Darvo. It was all to discredit me before I found what he had done. I didn't even hang up my phone. I just ran out of my apartment and banged on my neighbor's door. Maya opened it. A corporate law brief in her hand. She saw my face, and her professional calm just took over. "What's wrong? Get in." I laid it all out. The transfers, the offshore accounts, the dates, the gala, the unstable campaign. She listened. Not as a neighbor, but as the sharp-as-nails lawyer she was. When I finished, she was quiet for a full minute. "Chloe," she said, "this just went from a family dispute to a federal crime. They aren't just harassing you. They are actively trying to destroy evidence and make you the scapegoat. You are in danger." That night, we didn't sleep. Maya made calls. She drafted declarations. We weren't just filing for a simple restraining order based on harassment anymore. We were filing an emergency order based on a credible, immediate threat. Backed by evidence of financial crimes, we cited the attempted break-in by my mother, the public threats at the gala, and the new motive wire fraud. We worked all night, fueled by coffee and adrenaline. At 4 a.m, Maya submitted the emergency petition to an after-hours judge. At 5:15 a.m., my phone buzzed. The emergency restraining order was granted. Mark, Laura, and Ryan were all named. They were legally prohibited from coming within 100 yards of me or my home. The order was served to them electronically. Instantly, at 5:20 a.m., I felt a tiny wave of relief. "It's done," I whispered to Maya. She looked at me, her eyes serious. "The legal part is done. But, Chloe, these people don't respect the law. They respect power. The order is just a piece of paper. Now, we wait for them to prove to a judge why we needed it." She was right. The order went through at 5:20 a.m. At 6 a.m. sharp, the pounding on my door began. "We are back to this morning." 6 a.m. The pounding on my door. I looked through the peephole. My father, Mark, my brother, Ryan, and 2 men in private security uniforms. My mother, Laura, was standing just behind them. Her hand pressed to her heart in a perfect performance of concerned mother. They had received the restraining order 40 minutes ago. They knew they were breaking the law by just being in the building. They didn't care. "Chloe, open this door," my father commanded. The old voice of authority. The one that had silenced me for 30 years. I stood there, my phone in one hand, live streaming and recording. The printed, court-sealed restraining order was in my other. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it would break a rib. But my hands were steady. "She's not answering," Ryan said, his voice tight with a panic I now recognized. "She's unstable. Dad, she's probably destroying the records right now. She's mentally unstable," my father announced to the security guards, projecting his voice for the whole hallway to hear. "We are here to secure the company's financial records." I heard my mother's rehearsed sob. "Please, Chloe, honey, and just let us in. We're just here to help you." I stayed silent. I'd already dialed 911, and the dispatcher was listening. The call active in my pocket. My father's patience snapped. "This is ridiculous. We know you're in there." "Chloe, you're messing with the books," Ryan yelled, his voice cracking. He was desperate. Get the bolt cutters, my father said, his voice dropping to that cold, flat tone that meant his decision was final. Open this door, now. There was a metallic click, and then a loud crack as the cutters bit into my high-security lock. The sound of metal snapping. That was it. That was the moment. A lifetime of fear and compliance tried to tell me to hide, to cower in the back of my apartment. But I thought of the stolen money. I thought of the gala. I thought of 30 years in that gilded cage. As the bolt cutters made their second snap, I took a deep breath, unlocked the deadbolt, and flung the door open. They stumbled back in shock, not expecting it. Ryan almost fell. The bolt cutters still in his hand, my father's face went from rage to stunned confusion. And my mother, Laura, standing behind them. I saw what I was holding. She saw the phone, its red light glowing. She saw the official court documents. She screamed. It wasn't a scream of concern. It was a scream of pure, undiluted horror. The sound of a performance being exposed. "What are you doing?" she shrieked, backing away as if I was the one attacking her. "I'm defending my home from intruders," I said, my voice shaking, but clear. I held up the restraining order. "This is a temporary restraining order, served to all three of you, 45 minutes ago. You are in direct violation by being within 100 yards of me or my residence. You are being recorded." "Give me that phone," my father lunged, his charm gone, replaced by pure, animalistic rage. He tried to grab my arm. I stepped back inside my doorway. "Don't touch me. And it doesn't matter. Everything you've said, everything you're doing, it's already uploaded to a secure cloud server." Ryan stood frozen, holding the bolt cutters, the blood draining from his face. He finally understood. This wasn't a family drama. This was a crime scene. "This is insane," my father sputtered, trying to regain control. "We are your parents. We have every right to check on our daughter." "No, you don't," I said. "Not by breaking down my door. Not after I told you to leave. And not when you're here to destroy evidence." Just then, the elevator at the end of the hall dinged. 2 Boston police officers stepped out, their hands resting on their weapons as they took in the scene. My father, red-faced and yelling. My mother, pretending to weep. My brother, holding bolt cutters. And me, standing in my doorway with a phone and legal papers. My father, ever the performer, immediately shifted. He put on his charming, concerned citizen voice. "Officers, thank God. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. Our daughter. She's not well. She's unstable. And she's stolen valuable company property. We were just trying to check on her." My mother chimed in. "We were so worried she was going to hurt herself." The first officer looked at me, assessing. "Ma'am." I had never felt so calm in my entire life. The adrenaline was gone, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. I stepped forward and handed him the restraining order. "Officer, my name is Chloe," I said. "This is a legal restraining order that was served to Mark, Laura, and Ryan at 5:20 a.m. this morning. They are here in direct violation of that order. I have them on video, which you can see, attempting to break into my home with those bolt cutters. They are not here for a wellness check. They are here to destroy evidence of my brother's wire fraud." The officer's entire demeanor changed. He read the order, then looked at the bolt cutters in Ryan's hand. He looked at my father. "Wire fraud. She's lying. She's the one who's been stealing," Ryan yelled, finally finding his voice. "I have all the records backed up." "Officer," I said, "which is why they needed to get in. They are here to silence me and frame me." The officer nodded. He'd seen this before. Maybe not in a seaport loft, but he'd seen the script. He handed the order to his partner. "Sir, I need you to put the tool down and place your hands behind your back." "What? You can't be serious?" my father blustered. "I am Mark. Do you know who I am? I know you're in violation of a court order. "Sire. You too," he said to Ryan. What followed was the most surreal moment of my life. My father, the patriarch, and my brother, the golden child, were put in handcuffs in the hallway of my apartment building. My mother just kept repeating, "This is a misunderstanding. This is all a misunderstanding." But her voice was flat. The show was over. As they were escorted to the elevator, my father looked back at me, his eyes promising a war I had never imagined. But for the first time, I wasn't scared. I just looked at him, and I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel fear. I felt nothing. I just nodded. And I closed my door. The legal case was swift. The restraining order was made permanent. My testimony, combined with the video from my phone and the digital records I had backed up to a secure server, was irrefutable. The moment the judge declared the order permanent, the police investigation kicked into high gear. It was no longer a family matter. It was a federal case. Me digital records, which I had so meticulously kept, painted a perfect picture of Ryan's embezzlement. The federal investigation into the real estate firm was brutal and quick. The family empire, built on my father's reputation and my brother's theft, collapsed like a house of cards. Ryan was arrested for wire fraud and embezzlement. My father was implicated in the cover-up. His attempts to seize the records, proving his complicity. The charity foundation was dissolved, its funds frozen. A hollow front for a corrupt system. The family's name, once a pillar of Boston society, was now synonymous with scandal. Their reputation was destroyed. That was 18 months ago. Today, my apartment is quiet. The sun filters through the same glass walls that once felt like a fishbowl. Now, they just feel like home. I grieved. That's the part people don't talk about. After the victory, after the relief, the grief comes. It was a complex, heavy thing. I wasn't just grieving the family. I had the one that tried to break down my door with bolt cutters. I was grieving the family I wished I had. The one I deserved. The idea of a father who was proud of me. A mother who protected me. A brother who was my friend. I had to learn a painful lesson. I had to let go of the fantasy that my blood family would one day wake up and see me. True healing began when I realized that family isn't an obligation you're born into. It's a sanctuary you build. It's a group of people who respect you, who see you. Letting go of my bloodline, as painful as it was the only way to finally find myself. And I did. With the severance I received from the company's bankruptcy, I did the one thing I had always dreamed of. I went to culinary school. Today, I own a small, successful catering business. I specialize in high-end, private dinners. I spend my days creating, tasting, and building something that is 100% mine. My passion is finally my profession. My neighbor, Maya, is now my best friend. We have dinner once a week. She holds a key fob to my apartment, and I hold one to hers. She's my, in case of emergency. She's my chosen family. My family's power was built on a single idea that I would never be brave enough to demand consequences, that their control was more powerful than my will to be free. They were wrong. For anyone out there feeling trapped in a role you never chose, for anyone suffocating in a gilded cage, I want you to ask yourself the same question my therapist asked me. The one that started it all? Whose life are you living? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it. Thank you for listening.